Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it. I didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.
Indeed, barn owls do not throw rocks. Got quite the crowd in the chat already. This is the Caffeinated Cryptid, real science, real encounters, real eyewitnesses. I'm Bobby Dizzle, the MC of the Goat Rope. I will also be MC of the Encounters Conference in Jonesboro, Georgia, March 14th. So 15th, March 14th and 15th, the Ides of March. So get your tickets there. I don't have anything prepared to show you where to go there, but it's called the Encounters in Jonesboro, Georgia. Look it up, 14, 15 March. I will be the MC, bringing everybody on stage. I might have a couple free T-shirts, just saying, because they don't fit me. So somebody's going to get them. So we got Rob Sullivan. He is a podcast host, a author of A Trek Within, and we're going to talk about my favorite new kick, synchronicities, manifestation, angel numbers, spirit guides. Seems to be what this podcast is turning into lately. I don't know. That's all I talk about. What's up, Rob?
Great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
I wish you guys could have heard our conversation beforehand. The ones before and the ones after are always better. And I guess that's a good thing. But Rob is going to tell us about how we speak to the universe and how it speaks back to us. And to get it started, I can't start without asking you about I know I was going to tell you to tell us a little bit about yourself, like a summer camp. But the lymphoma story, you have to tell that to get started. It seems like the basis of it. And I had a similar thing happen, not nearly as severe, with a 50% pay cut that led me down a similar road. So I wanted to see how it compared and the hills and valleys followed. So you can tell that as you may. We can ask questions, take chat.
Perfect. Well, we'll work the angel number thing in there too, because that's actually how it all started. About a year ahead of time, I started seeing the number 555 a lot. Mm-hmm. And I had been used to, angel numbers because just, 444 was the one that was sort of my gateway drug, if you will, into that whole realm. I remember reading about it in a book, and it's like suddenly it's everywhere. But then 555 started showing up, and it got my attention because that's not a number that you see a lot, or at least it wasn't, when at the time. And just it went, from a couple times a week to, every day to a couple of times a day. And when you look it up, what it means is major life changes upon you. So I'm thinking, cool, lottery win, Swedish bikini team. I had lots of visions of what that might look like, none of which came to pass. But it was
Dumb and Dumber reference there.
Say that again.
Nice Dumb and Dumber reference.
Yeah, exactly. So. But what had happened, because that thing built up to a crescendo, and then the highest point of that is when I got diagnosed with lymphoma, and that was wild too, because there were all these little synchronicities that happened around the time that the tumors were developing. I got a call from a friend, and she said, "Hey, I know you've got an extra room in your townhouse. Would you ever be open to renting that out?" And I wasn't really looking for a roommate at the time, but I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? And so her friend Christina comes over. Christina and I talk, and I said, she seemed cool. And I said, well, the room's yours if you want it. And a couple of weeks later, she calls me up and she says, yeah, if that is still available, I'd like to do it. Well, why do I mention that? Because Christina worked for a company called Immerman Angels, and Immerman Angels is a one-on-one cancer support group. And the only way that you can get a job there is if you've had cancer or if you've been the primary caretaker of someone who had it, which was really interesting because when I got diagnosed with lymphoma, one of the biggest fears around, in my mind was the uncertainty of how to deal with this. I'm very independent. I didn't really want to be nursed necessarily, but just the peace of mind of having somebody around who knew, what was going on and who would, help somebody in that situation before was incredible. It was interesting. So fast forward, spoiler alert, I survived that whole episode. Opened me up in a million ways. I was telling a friend of mine today, it seems like the best gifts that you get are wrapped in the worst packages. And that was one of them. I mean, it was a beautiful gift in terms of life and the love that, surrounded me and just the opening of my emotions, but the packaging left a lot to be desired. Well, fast forward, I was in a job. I had taken a full-time job because usually I do training and, I've been working on my own. But right before I got diagnosed, I took this full-time job, which also turned out to be a gift because I had a steady income, whereas before, if I had been relying on traveling around speaking, that wouldn't have happened when I was going through all the chemo. But what was interesting about that was, so there was a woman that I worked with, and I used to tell her about the 555 thing. And she's like, she thought I was exaggerating. But then when we would go out on calls and go out to meet clients and whatnot, I pointed out to her and she's like, oh my God. And one day, and I showed a picture of this in the book, there was right across from where I was doing a workshop, there was a sign for pizza for $5.55. Now, I don't know about your town, but $5.55 is not a pizza price.
No.
$9.99, $12.99, $14.99, not $5.55. And when she saw that, she's like, wow, that really is wild. And it was even at the Christmas party, I bought a bottle of wine for the guy who ran the company. And, I forget what the price on the bottle was. It was whatever it was. But there was a separate price tag on the bottom when I got to the cash register because I was looking. I obviously wanted to take the price tag off before I got to the party. And there's a separate tag underneath it, 555, not 5.55, no dollar sign, no nothing, just 555 on the thing. Mm-hmm. When I got I left that one on and I showed it to her at the party. She's like, oh my God, you really are surrounded by that.
Yeah, that's I'm having chill bumps thinking because that kind of stuff happens to me all the time. And when you said you just see it in random places, and I use it. I have, the 555s are what they call the collective, the triple ones. It's for the collective. But then do you have an individual one, like a 58 or like a 32?
Oh yeah, I do. I've got one it's really interesting. It's my birth month and birth year, and that shows up a lot.
Mine actually changed last year.
Really?
I don't understand like what it means. I'm kind of zeroing in on it. Every time I think I got to read on it, it shifts. But you think it's going to be this. I'm like, no. If you build it, he will come. That kind of thing. It's I missed that word. But yeah, I had forever. I mean, I still have my main one that whenever I'm going through some kind of something's coming down the pipe and I'm worried about it, it'll flash for me. Like, oh, that's cool. So I kind of just, put my shoulder into it. But then the main one I see all the time has changed recently, which I didn't know. It did it once a long time ago after about 3 months and moved to my main one. But the complete and total.
Did you ever look it up? Joanne's Sacred Scribes is the one that I usually look up. Yeah. Type in the number and then write angel number and then Joanne. And it always shows, she's the first one that goes up when you do that. I like her interpretations of things. Yeah. But it's interesting. You mentioned when you're worried about something. When I'm worried about something, the one that shows up is invariably 222, which
means you're on the right path.
Yeah, everything's gonna be okay, kind of thing. And it's funny because I try not to worry about stuff, but there are times that I'm like, oh man, how's that gonna work out? And uncertainty is just not. It's one of my least favorite things. But it's wild how often when I'm feeling just kind of on the edge, that'll show up too. And it's nice. I've got a friend who calls them God winks, when these little synchronicities happen. And, it's like, hey, you know what? You're in the right place. Don't worry about it. It's all working itself out.
Somebody compared them to when you're trying to train a dog or you see somebody I've never trained a dog and you see them, the owner click something and it brings them back their attention back, that's what it's for.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I straight up worry. I worry like I've never experienced this, like I have no faith. I worry like I've never been, like it's never, like I'm like, I have no reason to worry like I worry. It's stupid. I think that's why I see them all the time. Like, hey, buddy, what's your problem? You know how this works. You can practically write a manual on how to kind of guide your way through it.
Exactly. And then you realize that, and it's been said many times, but most of the things we worry about don't actually happen.
No.
Yeah.
And they're always good if they do.
Yeah.
The end result is just like, oh, well, if that would have happened, that never would have happened. And I can't ever figure out if whenever I get something done that I have to get done, do I have a sense of accomplishment or relief it's over? I can't figure out which one it is. Like, are those the same thing? Because I like run on dopamine a lot of times, and like I said, I'm in IT, and so I'll take like an IT certification. It takes me 2 months, 3 months to study for it, tons of books, and I get it. And I'm like, and I don't change jobs or anything. I just have it, and I feel great for like 3 months. So does it accomplish anything, or just worry myself to death for nothing?
Depends, I suppose, if you're if you're using it right away and you're keeping it and whatnot. Then
yeah, it's one of those things. I'm always paranoid because I told you I got a 50% pay cut in 2014, and ever since then, like the world has been me like against it, like William Wallace against pay cuts. Anything I can do to solidify some kind of security, and I've like asserted myself for bear against it. And so I could probably double my salary right now if I wanted to, but I love my job right now. But like I'm so adverse to getting strung out or not strung out. I don't do drugs. I'm so adverse to getting like, just left out to dry by some job that I've overcorrected, and now I'm like way too protected, which is not a bad thing.
Well, it was interesting because one of the other synchronicities that happened with the whole lymphoma thing was, after I'd gone through the treatment and, things were back on a even playing field, I realized that the job, that full-time job that was a gift at the beginning of the process was just a complete, ball and chain at the end. And so I realized it just wasn't a good fit. I mean, for any number of reasons. And I literally spent 6 months because I had given up, because as a professional speaker, there's a fair amount of time, from the, when you're trying to develop business and all that. It's not like, somebody's going to call you up and be like, hey, next week, we need you. I mean, that happens once in a while, but you can't count on it. And so I was sitting there, kind of panicking going, all right, all of that business, I, walked away from to take this job. Now this job is not what I want to be doing. What am I, I literally 6 months, I was like, oh, I got to quit, but how am I going to do it? What's going to work? And then finally, one day I was talking to my attorney, because there were a lot of issues. And she's like, why do you want to work with these jerks? Because we were trying to work together, coming up with an agreement where I would be a contractor for them. And now that jerks was not the word that she used, but she's like, but I remember it was Thursday night and I'm like driving back from a client gig and I'm like, you know what? She's exactly right. I don't want to work with them. So I'm like, you know what? I have a friend who says, when you take the first step, the universe meets you more than halfway. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to leap. It's time. I'm not doing this anymore. So I get home 6 o'clock in the evening. I write the letter to them saying, you know what? We've tried. It's obviously not going to work. Let's sit down and we'll talk about transitioning the clients. And, so I'm like, okay, phew, relief. 6 a.m. the next morning, I get an email from a client I hadn't heard from in a couple of years. And he said, Rob, we've been thinking about you. Thought you'd be the perfect person to do this coaching assignment we want to take on. And then when he found out, they were originally going to schedule it, for like 6 months later. But then when they found out that I was going to be available in as soon as 2 weeks, they moved it up. And that one assignment took me through the next 6 months, which gave me the opportunity to build a business again. And it literally left me feeling like I had spent 6 months leaning against the door of abundance, trying to keep it shut, with all the worry I was doing. And the minute I let go, everything fell into place.
You were snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah, exactly.
You sound like me right now, because I've got like 15, 17 years in it, and I can't turn it loose. I'm just waiting on some kind of windfall, waiting on the right time. It sounds like me talking to myself.
Yeah,
that's good.
The right time. You just got the right time is now.
Yeah, one time I said I was talking to myself the other day. I said I should just treat everything like like you're having a baby. Like you're never at the right time to have a baby.
Yeah,
Like your life just kind of wedges itself toward it.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
like the same premise, but you're so scared. That's
Yeah.
why I have so many damn kids out here.
Do you really? That's
Mhm.
awesome. Kids
Never
are
a right time, but it always works out.
Yeah.
That's so you got the 555 all the time. I've already asked you this, but like once you start acknowledging that, I've noticed it gets more specific. You start getting like you start getting like the combination. You know, 5 always means change. 2
Mhm.
means right path. I can't think of what 3 means. I get 5 and 2s a lot.
Three is the ascended masters are watching
Mhm.
out for you. 4 is the angels. One's a good one. I get that
Yeah,
a lot. Like 111 or 1111, where it's you're manifesting at record speed.
Yeah.
Which also, but that's a bit of a warning in a way because
Stop thinking about it.
you want to manifest something positive. And I love probably the great one is 777, which is your wish is coming true. Keep up the good work, kind of thing. So
There's some that I was getting 27 for like a week straight.
that's
I didn't.
what that one is.
It means somebody said it means congratulations, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't know. I just kind of hang on. Maybe something will happen. That's how it always works out. Like I just keep going and like putting effort into stuff, like best I know how, and I get steered toward it. I don't.
Good for you.
I know I'm not smart enough.
Yeah. It's things happen for people when they're in action, when they're doing stuff. It's not for the people who are sitting at home on their hands going, things will be great when.
Yeah, you have to the old adage, you can't pray for a hole while you stand there holding a shovel. You have to start digging, and like they'll put like the supercharge behind the action. And I think that's why I've been seeing my angel number change to something that's very specific with this Mothman crap. And if you've seen Mothman prophecies, you know the number. But I'm not going to say it because I don't know how it works. I don't know if it works like birthday wishes. Like you say it all goes away. I don't think it does, and I'm not testing it. But it happens to be like the main number for the whole Mothman prophecy franchise universe that I've been seeing forever, and it just hit me to do a 100-day series on it. So I'm like, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah. There's so much that we just can't, and that's what I think is so amazing about like life in general. There's and I don't know, just got inspired to share this with like so right now I'm down in the islands, and I was a couple of weeks ago, I remember when it happened. I don't remember exactly where it was, but I stepped on something. And I thought it was like a thorn or a rock or a piece of glass or whatever. And I didn't look at it in the moment. I tried to just kind of brush it off my foot without looking at it. Turns out that the next thing I know, my foot's swollen, like foot, ankle, the whole thing. It actually hurts and whatnot. And so I had a session with my friend Nadia. Nadia is this amazing psychic, and she's got a guide named Fred, who is absolutely hilarious, and he's completely irreverent. I love the guy. So I had a session with her about a week or so ago, and this was a week after the foot had happened. But then I was, just in the process of going to the doctor to get antibiotics and stuff, and I was going to ask her about it. And we're like a couple minutes into the reading, and she's, talking about some work stuff, and then all of a sudden she pauses and she goes, "I'm sorry." She goes, "I got to change subjects for a second." She goes, "Fred wants to talk to you about your foot." I'm like,
Fred would like to discuss the foot.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I can believe it because he's always incredibly accurate, but the fact that he brought it up without me even asking, and it's not like I was testing him. I certainly wasn't doing that. But I love the fact that he did that. And then he's like, yeah, he goes, "You're having an allergic reaction to the venom." He said and then he said, they were very specific. He said, "The antibiotics that they put you on are okay, but you're going to need something else." And sure enough, they ended up having to use prednisone because the antibiotics didn't do it on its own.
What'd you step on?
Yeah, that was the one thing I didn't ask him. And I should have asked him. I'm thinking it must have been some sort of a spider or whatever, because on the bottom of my foot, I had all these like dots and stuff. And there was this one particular point of like a puncture wound kind of thing.
Yeah, there's only a certain amount of things it could have been. You
Yeah.
got your jellyfish, your urchins, and your stingrays.
Yeah.
But I feel like you'd have been a lot more pain if it'd been a stingray.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's why
Catfish do it too.
Yeah.
If you step
really?
on a catfish burr,
Oh,
they,
I didn't.
yeah, catfish, they have the little burrs on the sides, their fins they steer with,
Oh, I didn't
and
know
they have
that.
the fins on top, and they all have venom in them.
Oh no.
But I
Wow.
don't know. I've gotten because we have a catfish pond, and I'll get bit by them right here trying to throw them back, and they'll. Yeah, it's possible. Maybe one was dead and you stepped on it. I don't know.
Yeah, could be.
It'd be. I can just the amount of bacteria in the ocean getting punctured. God knows what it was. Could have been anything.
Well, this is true. Yeah, because I remember I was scuba diving early in my career, and I was probably like 22, something like that. I remember we're about 90 feet down, going through a swim through, and I wasn't paying attention, and I bumped my head into the coral going through the thing. And, I didn't really think that much about it. It didn't really bleed, but I remember, my dad was a doc, and I showed it to him, and he goes, who knows? He goes, there's so many, living things that, we don't even know what they are in the ocean. But, there was some sort of a fungus or God knows what, and it took a couple of weeks for it to go away. Which is, I don't remember exactly what it looked like. I remember it was not the most attractive look I had ever had. But,
like you had Bell's palsy.
Yeah, I feel so bad for people who get that. That's horrible.
I'm terrified of the thought of a swim through. I don't know how you would do that. Swimming through those little holes.
It was wild and I think it's called Santa Rosa Wall in Cozumel. I'm trying to remember I don't remember the exact dive site, but what happens, you go in at like 60 feet and you go down, and at 90 feet you come out. And when you come out, there's a wall and it drops down into an abyss. So you go from being, it's the weirdest thing to be 90 feet underwater and then have a fear of heights because you're looking down the bottom's like 3,000 feet down. You can't even see it.
Like a million years of human evolution just all come to head at once. Your body doesn't know how to react to it. What is this?
Doubt. Well, and it's such a trip when you think about it, because you're swimming around and you're looking at something that is exactly as it was probably 100 million years ago. There aren't very many places on Earth that are like that.
They can't change, physically can't.
Yeah.
And God knows what's down there.
Yeah.
What islands are you on right now?
I'm in St. Martin at the moment.
UBI.
Yeah, but it was St. Kitts is where I stepped on the thing.
Yeah.
Whatever that thing was.
The magic burr.
Yeah.
It's crazy that also reminds me of the Seinfeld episode where George got that psychic reading before he went to Puerto Rico. Something bad's going to happen.
That one.
Yeah, and Kramer took his ticket because he didn't want the bad thing to happen. He got stung by a jellyfish, and that's what happened. That's all it was, buddy. He goes, I missed a whole trip.
Jellyfish are like, even the little white ones, they can do a number on you if you're not, I got stung by, I'll never forget, we were in Chesapeake Bay, just boogie boarding on the back of a boat. And there were, you'd get like stung and you wouldn't necessarily feel it in the moment, but then you'd come up and you'd be all right or whatever. And then I remember one day after we had finished, we get back on the dock and I look down and I'm thinking to myself, man, I have never seen so many jellyfish in one place at one time. Well, the guys that I was with didn't realize that there were jellyfish there, and they saw me looking over and they thought it'd be funny to push me in. And that was the time I felt myself get stung. And like they literally, I was screaming and they had to like pull me out because I couldn't even move. I was just getting stung left and right by all these jellyfish. But they were like, it's not like Man of War. It wasn't deadly. It was just a thing.
Yeah, I mean, but that's still 100 jellyfish is 100 jellyfish.
Holy cow, that was brutal. But fortunately there's meat tenderizer. I don't know who figured that out, but when you put meat tenderizer on, it goes away pretty much instantly.
Oh, like the nitrites? Comes in a little spice can?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So it means if I'm making beef jerky and get stung by jellyfish.
Yeah.
Instant.
If you don't have it, urine will work, but that's a little less appealing.
Just the instant relief. Yeah, I've never been stung by a jellyfish. What I've always compared those to pack saddles. They've got to be the similar. Yeah, the caterpillars that are spiky. You see them in like nature documentaries.
Yeah.
They're real colorful and they got spikes all over them.
Are you the ones that look, kind of have like an orange head and a brown?
They're always got like a crazy bunch of colors on them.
Yeah.
And those are called pack saddles, and they're kind of woolly, and they got those spikes on them. Those things, they get you, they're this long, and every inch of them's got a spike, and you'll get a rash that long on you. Like they'll stab you with every one of them at once.
Ooh. Oh, that's brutal.
And I've gotten that a bunch just being in the woods, and I bet it's the same as a jellyfish because it's like 50 at one time, and it doesn't hurt, but you're like, mother of God, what just happened to me? And the whelps come up, and it doesn't take effect immediately, especially if you're just moving.
Yeah,
just a glancing blow, and 10 seconds later, son, what happened? Like, why's my arm swelling up? That's what. And I got one at church one time, just going in front of a car into a bush, and I remember just thinking, what is happening? Why's my arm just like, what kind of wrath of God is happening in the parking lot in front of my dad's truck? And I didn't tell anybody because I'm like, I don't know what happened. Like my arm is swelling up, and I didn't do anything but touch that bush. That's what it had to be. But I figured jellyfish has got to be a lot similar to that. And it's like I'm not going near those things.
Yeah, although what you just described actually sounds worse.
Yeah, it's delayed for a second because you don't know. You're not in a place where something should sting you. You should see it, and they're kind of blended in anyway.
Yeah,
well, they'll get you. So
there's so much stuff out there. It's like man.
I don't know where you live at primarily, but like here in Alabama, like everything will kill you. It's like little Australia or little Florida, like Florida and Australia and Alabama, the South in general. Like everybody gives Florida this bad rap for having these things, but Alabama and Texas, Georgia, it's all the same. Like you lift firewood, you got to take your glove and get the firewood and just beat it against a tree to make sure nothing's on it that'll bite you.
Wow.
My kids will go out there with me together, and I'm like, you can't just gather in a dart. You got to have a flashlight. There's a copperhead in here, sure as shit.
I grew up in Chicago, so the only equivalent that we have of that are just the gang members.
Yeah, the gang. I was going to say this gang violence. Yeah. I think I'd rather deal with a copperhead than deep dish pizza.
Yeah.
Chris in the chat's from Chicago, and I got drunk on another podcast one night and started giving him all kinds of shit about how I hated deep dish. He was in chat of another show I do, and I was drinking. I'm like, look here, deep dish sucks.
Have you had stuff though?
Stuffed crust? I haven't. I was just messing with him. I don't hate deep dish. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, stuffed is awesome. Yeah, because deep dish is where the crust, cheese, and then like whatever you got, and then like sauce, and then the ingredients. But stuffed is the second layer of dough, and then the sauce on top. Oh my God, Giordano's, Eduardo's, awesome.
We went to a place. I was in a high school band, so we toured the country, and we went to a place there that was a giant organ, like a church organ, and it was a pizza place. And it was like authentic Chicago style in the organ. It was like the largest organ in the world.
No kidding.
But they served deep dish, and no one from Chicago has ever heard of this place. So I'm like, did they go out of business? Were we in some kind of child trafficking ring? I don't know what. Like no one's ever heard of it. It was supposed to be like the best place to have it in Chicago.
They had an organ. I can't even.
Yeah, it was. You know how a Catholic church has organs in front.
Yeah,
because I'm Catholic too, and it's like giant pipes everywhere. Well, this place was all of that, and they glowed color when it played, and there was an organist in the middle, and it was just playing all popular songs. And
was it downtown?
I don't know. I don't really know.
Because I grew up downtown, I don't remember anything like that.
I was in high school. It could have been like 100 miles. You know how you say I'm in Chicago, but you're like 100 miles away. It could have been something like that. But we played at Navy Pier, so we didn't stay that far from it.
Okay, well, Navy Pier is like right downtown. That's
it's in the midst.
I cannot, for the life of me, think what that would have been because I grew up like 5 blocks from there. So, like, you would think that I would know that, but
I'm looking this up.
Yeah,
gotta find. But yeah, it was wild. Organ piper pizza.
What did you play?
I played the trumpet.
Did you? Nice. I played trombone for a while.
That's Wisconsin. We definitely weren't in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to a bunch of the bowl, the giant bowl games. We went to like the Rose Bowl. We went to the Fiesta Bowl. Where'd your tab go? There you are. And but like in the years in between there, because those you had to raise money for like a year beforehand, like car washes and candy bar sales. And so in between, we go to like DC, your typical field trips. We go to DC and play in front of the Capitol. We went to the Navy Pier.
You guys must have been a hell of a lot better than we were. Well, I mean, I did it in grade school, so I mean, how good can you be in 7th, 8th grade? But
Oh yeah, our band director was like one of the best in the country. She was push us.
That's awesome.
Like people still, she's been retired for like 15 years, and people still talk about her.
Yeah,
but she sent us to. I go to places we never would have went. I never would have went back then. I had seen the Grand Canyon and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Lucky you.
Looks like this place may be called PMQ's Pizza.
Never heard of it. That's wild. Huh. Interesting. I love it when I learn something new.
Becker's Pizza? I don't know. This is 92-year-old Barton Theater organ.
Yeah.
It can't be. It seemed more crazy. It was like it was everywhere. I bet it's out of business. Yeah, but Chris says it's pizza.
Yeah.
I just found out there was a Chicago-style thin crust pizza the other day.
Yeah, there's a bunch because there's like the New York style, but then there's the tavern style where there's where we like to cut it in squares.
Yeah, there's no crust and it sits in little squares.
Yeah, it's really good.
Turns out I might like that better than New York style. I'm eating my words after doing some research.
Yeah,
which is typical for me. You
got to get the tangy sauce though. It's a lot better than the sweet sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the best pizza places are pretty much gone, but the Giordano's is still good for stuffed. They have a thin that's not so thin; it's actually kind of thick, but that's pretty good too. But there was a place called Jake's. Man, that I used to deliver for them, and that was amazing.
You say Jake's?
Yeah, Jake's. It was. There's still one in Northbrook, but it's not as good as the one that was in Glenview. Yeah,
I've got a guy that tours and does these Sasquatch conferences coming here in April to visit the local library that my friend actually is the chairman of. And it just so happened that I knew the guy. He goes, "Do you know this person?" I'm like, "Oh man, he's coming." I'm like, "Yeah." So now I'm getting the tour of this popular Sasquatch guy around. He's from New Jersey. Like, what am I gonna take him to pizza? Like, just he's gonna like make fun of me for the rest of his life. I take him to an Alabama, New Jersey style pizza place. So no, we're taking him to barbecue and barbecue only. Something he can't judge. He doesn't know. Yeah. It's like, yeah, let me take you to a New York style pizza place in Alabama. You're gonna roast me on the spit. Forget about that.
Yeah. True.
Anyway, like I told you, we'd do a rabbit hole. Definitely a rabbit hole. But I had one question came to my mind. When you were going through your lymphoma treatments, was there any signs that came your way that told you were going to be all right? Like, you basically just said you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You've been given you knew it was going to happen, but you just had to endure it for 6 months.
Yeah, there were so many amazing things that happened. I mean, It really was a gift and a journey, even though not one that I would be in a hurry to repeat. Couple ones that come to mind. So my friend Cynthia, who was 2 years ahead of me in grade school, I was very public about what I was going through because I believe in energy. I believe in the way, people, if people are catastrophizing on your behalf, that's going to have an effect, right? And so I put it out there and said, I basically said, this is what I'm going through. There's a good chance that, I'm going to get through this okay, but, I'm not asking for gifts or visits or anything like that. But if you feel so inclined, visualize these things just going away. And so that was a big part of the whole thing. And it was funny because my friend Cynthia tells me that when she was meditating, she visualized and saw the tumors melting, which is a really interesting word to use. Okay, so fast forward a couple of appointments later, I'm at the doctor's office, and he was talking about this drug Rituxan, which is the first one that they gave me. And he was describing it. He said, well, the whole purpose of Rituxan is, he said, it literally melts the outside wall of the tumor cells. And I'm like, no kidding. Like, here she was visualizing that. And then my
that was after she told you that?
Yeah, he told me he told me that after she told me about her vision. And I had never heard anybody say the word melt, in contact. And
heard it 2 times in 2 days. That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that wild? And then the other thing that was interesting, my friend Tracy was she's a yoga teacher, and she was in class, and they were doing Shavasana at the end of class. And she said during her Shavasana, she had a vision of my healed soul. And she said it was this, it was just this bright, like body shaped thing was the impression that I got. And she said she said you were just radiating light. And she said that was the moment that she knew that I was going to be okay. And I was like, so it was more like other people had things like that on my behalf, which I thought, I'm totally cool with that too.
Yeah, that's why I always get irritated when somebody says, prayer doesn't work, because that's what happened. Like, it's this long and the short of it. Like, it does work. It's not like a 3 wishes kind of thing, but it does work. It's energy in the universe, and it's a real thing.
It really is. And it's interesting because, I'll give you a real life example of prayer working for me. And it was not in the context of the tumors. It's a little bit longer of a story, but I'll share what happened. So there's a guy that I had become friends with, and he was a musician in Chicago, and he was super talented, just a really good guy. And he and I were hanging out and having a lot of fun and stuff. And then all of a sudden he stopped calling, and we'd gone, we were going out, for sushi and dinner a couple nights a week and just hanging out and having fun. And then all of a sudden, I didn't hear from him. And so I called up. In the interim, I had heard that he was dating this woman that I had dated. And so I called her up and I said, hey, I know he's got a big birthday coming up and I don't want to forget about it, but I don't remember the exact day, his birthday. And she said, she paused and she goes, yeah, you're not going to hear from him either. And I'm like, why? And she goes, because you lied to him. I go, what are you talking about? I said, about what? And she goes, about us. I said, I'm totally lost. And she said, you told him that we had never dated. I said, no. I said, he asked me if we were still going out. And I assured him that we weren't. And I knew that you were interested in him, which is why I encouraged him to ask you out. And I said, and as I understand it, you guys are dating. So I failed to see the harm in any of this. And she goes, well, he has a thing that he won't date anybody that any of his friends have ever dated. And I'm like, what are we, 11? But I put that aside and I said,
you have to fight now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, well, he was a big dude. He was like, I'm like 5'9". He's like 6'4", 300 some pounds. And he's, but I'm thinking to myself, it takes 2 to miscommunicate, but you know what? The easier thing here is for me to just own it. So I picked up the phone, I call him up, and I left him a message because I knew he wasn't going to pick up. And I'm like, hey, I said, I apologize. I said, I thought you were asking me if we had ever, or if we were currently dating, not if we had ever dated. I said, I had no intention of misleading you. I only wanted to encourage you to, go out with her because I knew that she was interested. Would love to talk about this, blah, blah. Never heard from him. Now, I knew that was pretty much going to happen. And I don't want to say that I created that necessarily. It was just a feeling. But what was weird about it was like, it started out, and I was, of course, at first I was feeling like, just like sort of misunderstood and frustrated. And then it shifted pretty quickly to anger. I'm like, what the hell? I mean, like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I can't believe that this is going on. Well, I know my body well enough to know that when I get sick, like if I've got congestion, it usually means there's a conversation that I need to have that I'm not having. Like the words literally get trapped and then it takes the form of an illness.
Interesting.
And that was actually when the lymphoma thing happened, because the first tumors that I found were in the neck. And that was what I thought was going on there too. But I start getting feverish and whatnot. I remember Saturday night, I'm on my, toward the end of the week, 5 days after I had left him the message, I've got a fever. I've got swollen glands in my neck. My dad's a doctor, so I call him up. I'm like, Dad, hey, this is what's going on. And he goes, you got the really bad flu that's going around. And I said, well, what can I do about it? He goes, nothing. It's a virus. He said, you just got to wait it out. And I said, well, how long is it going to take? And he goes, my patients have had it for 2 weeks. He said, this is a really bad one that you've got. And I'm like, I got an out of town speaking gig on Wednesday. He's like, you better find somebody else because you're not going to be there. So he goes, just go to bed, go to bed and just get some rest. So I go upstairs and I'm laying in bed and I'm delirious, I'm feverish. And I started to pray because I'm like, God, I need help. I said, the conversation that I most need to have is not going to happen through no fault of my own. And I knew, and by the way, it never did happen. I knew that he was not going to contact me. I just had this feeling. And I said, I need to let go of this anger that I'm feeling because this is, it's just not a good thing. And so I get an image. Now, that Da Vinci, I think it's called the Vitruvian Man or something, where he's got his arms out and legs out.
It's like all different direction.
Yeah, exactly. So it's literally what shows up. I'm laying on my back in bed, and above me, I see this hologram of the Vitruvian Man, and he's in there, with, taking up the circle. So it's like him instead of the Da Vinci guy. But interestingly, on top of it was my nephew, who was 3 years old at the time. And I'm like, and my nephew's taking up the exact same space as this guy who's 47 years older and 300 pounds heavier. And I'm going, and I literally laughed out loud. I go, that's fascinating, but I don't get it. And that was one of the 2 times in my life I've ever heard a voice in answer to the prayer. And the voice came back and he said, and it was neither male nor female. It was a very interesting voice, but it said, he is at the emotional development level of a 3-year-old. It is not his fault. Be more compassionate. And I was like, I immediately got it. I'm like, I would never get mad at my little nephew for a misunderstanding like that. And just because this guy's older and, heavier and an adult in shape and size does not mean that he's capable of, and, it just doesn't mean. And I got it. I'm like, oh, that was a perfect image. And I immediately let go of all the anger and frustration. I woke up twice that night, drenched with sweat, completely drenched. I woke up in the morning. I was fine, completely healed.
Oh, wow.
And that was an answer to a prayer. And it was like, but I had to, let go first and say, I need help. I can't do this. I have no idea what's up. And that was, the kind of the hard thing about the lymphoma too, in a way, because it feels very emasculating. I don't know if that's the right word, but where you're raising your hand and say, I'm a guy, I can't do this on my own. I need help. That's not a powerful feeling. Oddly, people were like, man, you are so strong. That's such grace. People had a very different reaction to my raising my hand than I felt in that moment. And they were both really powerful reminders that you don't have to do it on your own.
So are they still dating? I'm sorry. I know it's kind of.
No, he died actually. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, he and I are never going to have that conversation now. And they dated for I want to say like a year or so, and then she contacted me afterwards, and she's like, "I want to apologize." She said, "I'm really sorry about that whole thing." I was like, "No sweat." I was never mad at her about it, and I wasn't really mad at him either. And it was like literally after that vision, I totally let go of it. I had nothing but compassion for him after that. There was never an ounce of anger or frustration about the whole situation. It was such a gift, but that vision was like unbelievable because it was talk about customized and perfect for me to be able to say, this is, you're looking at this all wrong.
Yeah, you thought it was some kind of something else and just really him not being ready to have that kind of situation yet. I'm probably more like him sometimes.
Yeah. Well, aren't we all?
Yeah. Just that whole thing. But when it makes you mad as hell when there's like it's a literal misunderstanding that they're wrong about, but they won't come to terms with it. I'm like, you're wrong, bro.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's a bit heartbreaking, but like there's a certain point where you can't, this Japanese healer I used to work with, used to say, don't chase. He said, you can welcome people back with open arms. You can be compassionate and forgiving and all those things, but don't run after people who are running away or being obnoxious. He's like, just let it go, which is really good.
That having your heart broke by like stuff like that is the weirdest feeling.
Oh,
like whenever somebody like the saying, like if somebody tells you who they are, believe them.
yeah,
Shows you who they are. I've had that happen a few times in the last couple of years.
yeah. A
Like,
friend
dang,
of
I
mine
thought we were
described.
friends.
Oh, said one. I didn't
Like
catch
I
what you
thought
said.
we were like people like I thought we were friends. I thought we were closer than that, but nope.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's like a soul ectomy. You know.
hmm
Yeah. But it's. I don't know. There's nothing easy about it. That's for sure.
I had
Or
I had a friend that I
people.
thought was like my best friend. It was like, or one of my best friends. Just like I found out he like hated me and thought I was stupid. And I'm like, what the hell, man? That was like we broke up from a relationship. And like he was one of my favorite people in the world. And I still just kind of respectively like his comments and if his kid does something funny, like, that's cool because I still think like I don't hate him, but like I can't believe you think something like that.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's
Like
people are weird.
no homo.
Yeah. It's just you gotta. It's hard to let people. I don't know. Well, I read one time, and I do think this is true. Abraham Hicks. I don't know if you've read any of those books, and I don't remember which one it was in, but the basic message that I got from it was most of the unhappiness on this planet is caused by trying to change the behavior of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ton of truth in that. And if you just can't. If people want to see things a certain way, there's nothing you're going to do that's going to change that.
Yeah, it's the weird. That's half of country music is trying to change somebody else's opinion. Wouldn't even be a genre.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the reasons why I don't get into political conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, first of all, I'm apolitical to start out with, but like, I don't think anybody's ever walked away from a political conversation saying, "Oh, I've been thinking about this all wrong." No, and there's no listening that's going on. If you watch people who are having a conversation like that, they're two people talking at each other. They're not listening to each other. They're not embracing each other's points of view, and they're walking away frustrated. I'm like, well, you just wasted however much time you spent talking.
Mm-hmm. One of my New Year's resolutions was to not post anything negative on the internet.
Well, it's hard. That's a great resolution.
Yeah.
And the hard one is not to even quietly not to complain. That's like, I mean, if you get behind the wheel of a car, I mean, that goes out the window like a block after you start, but it's like those things are, I need to get better at that because I'm not, that's definitely a weakness.
Let things go instantly. I've tried to get better at that because you get mad at somebody. Come on, dude. Man, you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Like,
this happens to everybody.
Dude.
I'm 10 times worse driver than they are, probably. Who knows? So what I do, I have a big truck that I get in everybody's way with. Who knows what I get said about me behind my back? Yeah. I try not to be an aggressive driver and be safe, but I can imagine on some people, just go, man.
I had a girlfriend. She used to totally crack me up. We'd be driving and somebody would honk, and she would just wave and smile. And I'm like, I looked at her one day and go, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, I just assumed they wanted to say hi." And I'm like, that is the perfect response because if somebody's honking, they're probably not saying hi.
Oh no, that's definitely not great.
It's going to tick them off more than having somebody smile and wave.
Hey, man.
I'm like, that's an evolved approach. Not what I've mastered, but I like it.
Yeah, I've been trying to pull the feet off the gas when it comes to getting instantly aggressive in the past few years because everybody's got crap going on. They're like, man, they could be having a relative die right now, and they're worrying about it, looking at a text message, and I'm getting mad because they won't go in a Chick-fil-A line or something. Like,
yeah, well, I heard a great little phrase, which I don't do it often enough, but it's imagine a righteous reason. Whatever they're doing that's annoying the hell out of you, imagine that, like you said, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe, somebody died or their dog died or whatever. And when you do that, it is interesting how you can tap into compassion and patience. I was sent to this planet to learn patience. There's no question about that. And I'm not doing so well with that lesson, but that's the big thing. And but I love it. When I do manage to do that, I vividly remember one day driving down the street. I was in Lincoln Park in Chicago, and I was right by the gym, and I get to this, 4-way stop sign, and this woman and I think we had arrived at the same time, and she started to go, then I started to go, and like it was the kind of thing that ordinarily I'd be like, just go, or I'd get really frustrated or whatever. And the two of us just looked at each other and burst out laughing because we just, whatever one did, the other did. And it was like, I'm like, why can't I react like that all the time? Why is it like 90% of the time I'm yelling at people, from the confines of my car? But that was like such a beautiful moment. And it was, it's like, I should have gotten her number. I'm like, I like you. You're cool.
Yeah. We're best friends now.
Yeah.
What's the that viral thing that went around where never attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance?
Oh, I hadn't seen that. I like that.
Yeah, it was like a man on the street quiz in a mall, and just like this guy's like, just go about your life, man. You never know what anybody's going through. Never attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance, man.
Yeah,
I was like, I like that guy.
Well, that's a really good thing because it's not, nobody woke up to say, okay, let's go get Bobby and Rob today.
You sound like my wife.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're doing it just because you're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why they wouldn't go through the line quick enough because you were behind us. They knew you didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny, like, because when you do get like little signs and stuff, just making sure you interpret them the right way. Like I remember, when I was going through, before I started the chemo, I went in for one of those. It's called a PET scan where they try to figure out how much the tumors have spread and all this stuff. And I went in, and of course, you don't get the results right away. And I get back in the car, and I'll never forget this. I'm pulling out of the Northwestern Memorial Hospital parking lot, turn on the radio, and "Don't Fear the Reaper" by the Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh shit!
I know. I felt like my heart just like flew up into my throat, and like literally at that very moment, my friend Robbie Schaefer calls up, and Robbie is a great guy. He's the lead songwriter for a group called Eddie from Ohio, and he's a phenomenally talented guy, super cool. And he called me up like out of the blue, and I'm like, damn, Robbie, am I glad you called? And I told him what happened, and he burst out laughing, and he goes, never doubt the universe has a sense of humor. And I'm like, oh my God, I love that interpretation because it didn't occur to me that it was a joke. It occurred to me that it was like a warning or something.
Yeah, there's two ways to take that.
Yeah, no doubt. But when he said that, and just the certainty in his voice that it was absolutely a joke, and obviously, given the way things turned out, it probably was. That was like, that's pretty wild when you think about it.
Especially with that song. I couldn't take that as a bad sign.
Yeah, that's a great tune. I love it.
Yeah, it's Bruce Dickinson. Bruce Dickinson.
Bruce Dickinson
from the Saturday Night Live skit. You know the cowbell? That's what the song is.
Yeah.
That's because Christopher Walken was playing Bruce Dickinson, the one that wrote the Blue Oyster Cult song.
I forgot about that skit. That was an awesome skit.
Yeah. That's where my mind goes. I'm that ADD.
More cowbell.
Yeah, it goes. I'm Bruce Dickinson. I put my pants on one leg at a time. The only difference is when I put them on, I make gold records. I got a fever. Chris gets it.
There you go. Yeah, he just did. I love it. That was perfect timing, Chris. Well played.
Yeah, I've got a couple of songs that will come on when I'm in the same songs that'll come on when I'm in a mood, and I know that it's pushing me like, hey, calm the hell down, bro. And they'll pop on. They'll come on a channel that's not even that genre of music. It's happened before.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's how you know.
Yeah, music is really powerful. Because it's funny because Abraham Hicks. I remember reading about how they talk about the emotional guidance scale and how if you're really angry or frustrated, their belief was that you can only improve like one emotion sort of at a time, and it can take a while to get from really frustration and anger to something a little bit more balanced. But music, to me, you can do it a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was in high school, I made what I called the "I'm Pissed Off" mixtape, and it started off with the like Sex Pistols and the Clash and the Ramones and just a lot of really, like heavy kind of stuff. And then it worked its way up into Shriekback and Psychedelic Furs and some other bands that I really like. And literally within, one side of a cassette tape, which was 45 minutes, I could go from being absolutely totally frustrated and angry to being like, hey, cool, everything's fine.
I thought you were going to say it ended with Tiptoe to the Tulips.
Yeah.
Now I'm all happy and creeped out for some reason.
Oh, who was that? Was I can
It's like Little John or something. It's one of those kind of weird names. Tiny Tim.
Tiny Tim. Yes. It's a funny song. Yeah.
Well, every time it's playing, it's terrifying. Because it was the Sinister song when she saw that little thing dancing in the house. Yeah. And it was the song they played on The Walking Dead right before the Whisperers attacked. And so I can't like sit still when that song comes on because I know it's just about to go down.
I just remember it was Dr. Demento. It was on one of his albums.
Tiny Tim. Yeah, the music thing is wild because it's kind of a way that relatives will communicate with you too. I don't know if that's something you ever deal with, but
like after relatives, you mean?
Yeah. Like after my great grandfather or grandfather died, like that whole the song I associated with him would come on every other day for like a week, as my alarm clock would back when I had an alarm clock radio before the iPhone was popular. Oh, I'd use the AM/FM radio, and it would be that song. Like it happened a bunch, and sometimes it was a version that I'd never heard.
What was the name of the song?
The song was "Dust on the Bottle," David Lee Murphy.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's a country song from the mid-90s, but it would play. Sometimes the live version would come on. Like, why would the live version be on? But it would just randomly play as the 6 a.m. song when my alarm went off.
That's really good. I'd say the coolest version of that happening for me was right around the time my dad was dying. I had a session with Nadia, the psychic I was telling you about before. And she told me, she goes, you are going to get some signs from your dad that are going to make you laugh out loud. And she said, it should happen fairly quickly. So I'll never forget, I was in London. I'm standing out on, I think it's Glass House Road, right out in front of the Whole Foods. And my brother, John, calls and he's like, hey, I want to let you know that Dad passed, and I'm, in London by myself. And I'm like, oh, man. And so I go into Whole Foods and I went upstairs and I'm waiting in line for the bathroom. And all of a sudden the thought crossed my mind. I'm like, I wonder what the first sign's going to be. And now my dad was the one who inspired my love of music. Seconds later, Buddy Holly, one of his favorite artists, comes on singing "That'll Be the Day That I Died."
Holy shit. That's like classic.
I know. And I burst out laughing and I'm like, just like Nadia said I would, I'm like, good one, Dad. That's well played.
See, it really makes you wonder how awful it is on the other side because they'll do stuff like that a lot. Like it's happened a bunch. One night I woke up thinking my grandmother was in my room. And I was so freaked out that the presence, like she might as well have been standing there. The presence I felt. And I couldn't get the TV to turn on.
No kidding.
And I just wanted something on so I could like eradicate it from my brain. 3 a.m, the perfect time of the day for that shit to happen. And it was back when I had DirecTV, so it had the little receiver box, and I had to reboot that. I had to reboot the TV. It was giving errors. I'm like, come on. I'm like, and then I was like, this is crazy. At first I thought it was evil, like she was mad at me or something. Then I realized she was messing with me.
Yeah.
I woke up feeling that presence, and it just, I woke up and watched like the Food Network for like an hour, went back to sleep.
What a gift.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens. Like, and just the different little things like that are all the time.
That's really cool. I'm trying to think if there have been any other music related ones like that. I remember I was in an elevator one time when out of the blue, I smelled my grandmother's perfume. Like it just it wasn't, the smell was not in the elevator when I got on. And, halfway up to the floor where I was going to, it suddenly happened. And I was like, wow, that's pretty wild. And it was one of those moments where I just knew that it was like she was come by to say hi.
Yeah. It really makes you like I said earlier, like it can't be that bad to be dead because they kind of mess with you a little bit.
Well, one of the most powerful things that happened, it wasn't I wasn't really getting messed with, but I spent a lot of time as a volunteer at the Children's Hospital in Chicago.
Mhm.
And there was a little girl there that I met when she was probably a couple months old. She was in what they called step down unit. So it wasn't quite intensive care, but she wasn't ready to go up to a floor. And so I literally every week, at least once a week for a year, sometimes more than that, I would go and play with her. And you couldn't hold her. I only got to hold her like once because she had, she was just very fragile.
Mhm.
About a year and a half, when she was about a year and a half old, the doctors told her family, they're like, there's nothing else we can do for her. And it would be better if she died at home. And of course, we're all heartbroken. And I'll never forget this. It was, so she left and, we'd said goodbye to her. And 2 weeks later, beautiful Saturday afternoon, I'm walking. At the time, the hospital was on Fullerton in Chicago, since moved downtown. And I'm walking past the hospital on my way to the beach. It's like 3:00 in the afternoon. And all of a sudden, I just got this feeling like it was like I was being hugged. And, and I knew immediately, I'm like, Annabelle just died. And sure enough, when I got to the hospital that Thursday for my regular volunteering shift, my supervisor, Jamie, comes up to me and she's like, we got some sad news this week. I said, yeah, Annabelle died, didn't she? And she goes, how did you know that? I said, it was Saturday around 3:00, wasn't it? And she's like, wow, how did you know that? And I'm like, and I didn't say anything, but I'm like, she came to say goodbye. And it was, yeah. That was probably the first spiritual experience I ever had where that got my attention. I mean, I went home that night, I bawled my eyes out because I just love that little girl. And the fact that she would come and say goodbye, I was just so touched by that.
It means you made an impression for sure.
Yeah. Well, she made an impression on me. That's for sure. Yeah. She literally, like, she was one of those people that, like, her smile lit up the room such that you didn't even have to be looking at her to know that she was smiling because you could just feel it. She was magical. Just a beautiful little girl.
It's crazy how people like that, like, always seem to go ahead of you. You're always missing people like that.
Yeah. Well, I think in her case, and that partly shaped some of my thinking too, because I used to think, I didn't always believe in like past lives and reincarnation and stuff like that. But, with her, there's no way a loving God, there's no way this is our only chance. A loving God wouldn't do that, and have somebody like her only live a year and a half and not get to really experience what life's all about. It just doesn't make any sense. And that was when I started to realize that she wasn't here for herself. She was here for other people. She was probably here as a teacher for the doctors, as a teacher for her parents. I certainly learned stuff from her. It's just a beautiful soul.
Yeah, the whole theory of the soul contract really speaks up when something like that happens. You realize that there was a purpose and like something changed. Like, well, why did that have to happen for that to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And then have you looked into that at all? Like, have you done any like regressions or anything like that?
Not on myself. I've had a couple of guests on that do it.
Yeah.
Almost to the point that I think it's probably truer than some people say it is.
It's amazing. Well, if you got time, I'll tell you what happened with me. And
yeah, I got time.
Yeah. So a number of years ago, when my first book came out, my first book was called Climbing Your Way to the Bottom. No, that actually got renamed later to Getting Your Foot in the Door When You Don't Have a Leg to Stand On. It was a job search book. And so it was not, it was interesting because it was getting really good reviews. And there were a number of schools that said, we used to use What Color Is Your Parachute, but our teachers and students like yours better. But it never really got any traction. And I couldn't figure that out, how a book that was, preferred to the best-selling book in the category by a number of different schools just never kind of took off. So I went to this, I had an appointment with this woman. Her name's Therese Rowley, and she's in the Lincoln Park area in Chicago. And I had heard about her. And so I'm like, I want to go and just kind of see what's up. Now, Therese had seen me speak, so she knew what I was all about. but she didn't know like that I was struggling in my business at the time or anything like that. And so when I got there, I just said, she's like, what do you want me to tune into? And I said, well, I'd like you to tune into just business and see if you can, see what you pick up. I tried to be as neutral as possible. Mm-hmm. She starts tuning in and she's looking and she's like, Rob, she goes, I see you. She said, you're working at a level of detail. She said, it's painstaking. And she said, I feel like you're not getting the payoff that you want from the work that you're doing. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that's for sure. And she goes, do I have your permission? Oh no. Then she starts digging a little further and she goes, you have the most elaborate system of stuffing your feelings of anybody I've ever seen. She said, it's beautiful what you've created, but I don't get that it's helping you. And she said, do I have your permission to look into that and to see what, where that's coming from? I said, absolutely. So she guides me through this thing. She said, say your full name 3 times, blah, blah. So she's like shutting her eyes and snapping her fingers and moving energy around and doing stuff. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. And she's like, oh. And I'm like, what are you seeing?
Speak, woman.
Yeah, no, exactly. And she said, you had a past life as a soldier in a fascist regime, we'll say. Ooh. And she didn't say exactly which one, although I have a sense of which one it was. And she said, you did not want to be a soldier. She said, but your family expected it, your country expected it. And she said, if you didn't do it, you were going to get killed. So you didn't really have a choice. So she said, you joined the military and you made a decision on your own. And you said, all I'm going to do is follow orders. That's it. And just block everything else out. She goes, but the problem is when you did that, she said, you were really good at following orders. And in following orders and blocking everything else out, you ended up getting promoted. So you became more and more responsible for some of the atrocities and things that were happening. Mm-hmm. She said, you finished that life and you turned around and you looked and you said, never again am I going to do that. I'm going to spend the rest of my life, in service to humanity with no expectation of earthly reward. And I'm sitting there going, well, that would certainly explain why I've been more or less circling the drain financially. And she said, let's figure out if this is a vow or an agreement. Now, what I love about Teresa is she's not one of these people who's like, oh, buy a couple of candles and I'll pray for you for a few weeks. And, it's only going to cost you this much. Everything was included in the one session. She's like, let's figure out what it is. Let's uncover it. Let's clear it out. I'm like, great. So she goes, turns out it was a vow. So she guides me through this whole thing about, clearing the energy. And I was like, okay. So fast forward to a week, I think it was a week later, I woke up and I'm going to call it a vision because it wasn't a dream in the sense I had gone to bed. And when I went, a lot of times when you dream about your house or something familiar, it's just it's not the same thing. It's like there's differences. It's I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but for a lot of people, that's kind of what it's like. It was my house. I'm back sitting on the sofa right where I was right before I made the decision to go up and go to bed. There was nothing different about it. And all of a sudden, it was raining outside and I hear a knock on the door and somebody was trying to get in. So I go down and I open the door and this being rushes at me. So next thing I know, I'm in the living room and on the far side of the living room against the window is this being. And he communicates telepathically to me. And he says, I am that part of you responsible for stuffing your feelings. You can't let me go. Now I'm like completely shocked in the moment. And I start thinking about the power of acknowledgement and how important that can be and whatnot. So I paused and I said, thank you. I said, you were there at a time where I really needed you. And I appreciate that. I said, I do not need you. It's time for you to go. And so I made it clear. I turned around and went back downstairs to open the front door and, to make it clear that there was no discussion. This is not happening. So next thing I know, he's standing outside and this little dog leads him away. And it was wild because when I saw Teresa at this event, like literally a day or two later, and I was telling her about the dream. And as I was telling her, this other woman said, she's like, she knew about Therese and what Therese, did. And she goes, "Can I listen to your story?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I said, I understand basically everything with the whole vision, but like what I don't get is the dog. And Teresa's like, I don't really get that either. And then the woman chimes in. She goes, "Oh, I know what that was." And we're like, "You do?" And she goes, "Yeah." She said, "When you were no longer willing to host that being, it had to get led away by something. And a dog represents unconditional love. So that was what led that being away." Now, I would love to look at you and say, here are the 3 things that I did to turn my business around. Look how smart I am and blah, blah, blah. Nothing changed in terms of what I was doing. But finally, after all of that, I did start to get traction. And I literally went from, a mountain of debt and not managing finances and things like that very well, to a point where people now look at me and they're like, "How do you take so much time off? How do you travel so much?" It literally turned around when I got that part of my life handled, but it was, as it turned out, a past life thing. Now, what Therese could not have known is my dad. I was born on an Air Force base. My dad loved the Air Force, absolutely loved it. I mean, everything I grew up around, you would think that, military was like where I'd want to go. From a young age, I wanted nothing to do with it. In fact, I used to think, if there was a draft, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And the very first song I ever learned how to play on acoustic guitar, one of the very first ones, is a song called The Ballad of Joseph Schultz, which is about a Nazi soldier. And it was this unbelievably powerful song by this guy named Dave Crossland. It's an amazing song. And I never understood why that song like really spoke to me until, and that was all before the reading. And then I had the reading and I was like, wow, there's no question in my mind that there was absolute truth in what she was saying. And the wild thing is, just by uncovering that, dealing with it, and basically forgiving myself was really what it amounted to. Then things started to turn around.
That's crazy. Imagine the subconscious guilt you had, you didn't even know was there.
Yeah. Oh, Greg asked, "What did the being look like?" Okay, that's a really weird thing. He was in a trench coat and he had a top hat on, and he had a very square jaw. He looked like Dick Tracy, which is really odd because I was never a comic book guy. And so the fact that was like the image that showed up, but that's what the being looked like. And by the way, it was that telepathic communication, which was one of the things that clued me into the fact that it was a vision. The only other time that happened, you got to hear this story. This is wild. My life was saved by a dream.
Yeah, I was wondering if this was the same dream that I'd heard about, that saved your life.
No. Okay, so this is going back 4 years ago now. I woke up, it was like December 30th, and I woke up and I'd had this dream where I was standing on, it was a vision because it was same sort of thing, the telepathic communication kind of thing. I'm standing on the edge of an ocean, and I'm looking out, and the water's really rough, the sky's gray, and you can tell that there had been a storm. Lifeguard's standing next to me, and he communicates telepathically to me that he's like, "Don't be fooled by the relative calm. It's going to get worse again." And then he turned around and he started running at top speed. I'm like, if he's running at top speed, I'm running at top speed. So I turn around and I start trucking away from the water. By the time I catch up to him, there is a huge wall to my left. It's like 50 feet high, huge cinder blocks, on top of each other. And as I got to the wall, this wave crashes into the wall, and you could see the wall was blocking most of the water, but about 5 to 10% was getting through. And so you could see on the opposite side of the wall, like seaweed and things like that coming out. So that was when I woke up, and I was like, wow, that was wild. So I go to the gym that morning, and I had after the gym, I'd pulled a muscle or something. And so my collarbone was kind of bugging me, and I was, massaging it and whatnot. So I go to my first appointment after the gym was to go to the orthopedic surgeon to get a cortisone injection in my ankle. And I happened to ask him, I said, if my ankle is bone on bone, which is what's causing the pain, I said, why is the pain 3 or 4 inches up my leg instead of actually in my foot? And he said, oh, that's referred pain. He said, and referred pain is where you feel something in a place where you shouldn't necessarily be feeling it. Like when I was going through the chemo, they gave me a shot one time in my, like right in my elbow where they would usually do it. And they hit a nerve, but I felt it in my hand and it hurt like hell. So, that's referred pain. My next appointment was the endodontist. My dentist wanted me to get a 360 x-ray because he was concerned that I had cracked a tooth that wasn't showing up on a regular x-ray. So I go there and the guy, as he's doing the x-ray, he says to me, he goes, do you ever get sensitivity in that tooth, like sensitivity to hot and cold? I said, not that one, but the one immediately below it. He goes, oh, that's referred pain. I'm like, why am I hearing about referred pain twice in one day? So I go back. I had a couple of appointments in the afternoon. 6 o'clock comes along. I'm like, I'm starving. Shrimp taco time. So I'm walking up Grand Avenue in Chicago, heading to my favorite place for tacos. And I literally get to the corner of Grand and Ogden. And it's just, like 4 or 6-way intersection. I guess 4. And all of a sudden, this collarbone thing comes back. And I immediately remembered the dream and how he was, he had warned me that when it came back, it was going to be worse. And so it sounds dramatic, but I'm standing on the corner and there's other people around. So I didn't say it out loud, but I looked up and I quietly prayed. I said, do I need to get this looked at now or can I go get shrimp tacos? That was the exact question that I posed to the universe. And the answer came back immediately. You need to get this checked. So I called for an Uber, went to the urgent care. I don't even know what I told them, but they immediately hooked me up to these monitors. And the woman looked at me and she goes, you need to get to the hospital right now. She said, you're having a heart attack. And it turned out that the artery on the left wall of my heart was 95% blocked. And, which is exactly like the dream. The wall was blocking the wall on my left side was blocking 90 to 95% of the water. Same thing. It was an image of what was going on with my heart. When I told that to my room, I went to a college reunion in July, this past year, and he's an emergency room physician. And I told him that story. He goes, dude, you are the luckiest guy I know. He said, that is the Widowmaker. He goes, I hate to think what would have happened if you hadn't, this didn't even hurt. I promise you, the last pain you can remember probably hurt 10 times as much as this. Mm-hmm. If it hadn't been for the dream, I would have ignored it completely.
That's wild. It makes me, every time I have some kind of pain, I think something like that's happening.
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. You see your protector was talking. Yeah, I think so. And people would be like, because this was not a year or two after my dad died. And they're like, do you think your dad? I'm like, my dad didn't run that fast.
Totally wasn't him.
Yeah. But it was, there's no doubt I've got some angels who are watching out for me, and I'm super grateful for that.
Did you have to get like an open heart surgery or anything, or did they do it?
No, they put a stent. Yeah.
Stent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm worried to death about that too. I'm getting to that age.
Yeah, well, definitely get checked because you never know. I mean, yeah. And I didn't think we had a family history of it, but it turned out we do. One of my great uncles died when he was like 48. I don't think, in fact, most of my uncles had died in their 40s and 50s. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
I go to physicals all the time. I'm not going to let one pass at least every 6 months.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah. Yeah.
It's great. I guess we can start to land a plane now. We got some folks in the chat. Flat Rock here. Good to see you last weekend, Flat Rock. He was I did a live show from down a few hours south, and he was there. He came on my show in person. He cohabitates with the big feet.
Nice.
Yeah, but
you got a local following. I can tell. That's really great.
Oh yeah, I got legends in the chat. These are people. Where's he at? Nope. Greg is a documentarian. He just came out with a brand new one. Everybody went to a premiere. He rented out a whole theater. It was pretty neat.
Oh, that's cool. I would love to.
A little bit scary. I rewatched it. I'm like, man, this is a little bit of a horror movie.
What was it about? Bigfoot, or was it something?
It was about Bigfoot and Dogmen and just like a hot spot here in the South.
That's cool.
There's a place called Land Between the Lakes that there's 2 lakes in between this strip of land. There's nothing on it, but it's land that the government robbed from people to make this place. And so it's all kinds of energetic. every hilltop has a cemetery on it. It's wild.
Wild. Is that documentary? Is that something I can like download on Netflix or something?
You can. It's on Patreon right now.
Patreon.
He sells DVDs. Like it just got released. I mean, we were there. I think it was the 4th of January,
Cool.
and it just now here it is. The DVDs haven't even been mailed out. It's that fresh.
No, well, I'm all about supporting creative people. I don't have a mailing address at the moment, but if there's a way to download it, I'd totally do that.
Yeah, I'll send you an email. Send you an electronic message.
Cool. I appreciate that.
They were all down there this weekend, Greg. The Squatch Seekers of the South. I thought about going, but I can't be away from my house too many weekends a month. I'll get told about it.
Hey, it's 22.
Wait, what was it? Oh, it is.
It's where I am is 2222.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you're farther west or east than I am.
Yep.
Sounds like a good time to end on then.
Yeah.
And the old plane. Well, everyone, this is Rob Sullivan. His book is Trek Within. Follow your inner compass. That doesn't mean put a needle inside of you. It means just listen to your heart. So no one. And I have where's the websites here for Mr.
The
Sullivan?
website's just trekwithin.com. And if people go to the website, you can download a free chapter, either a PDF or you can download the audio, free chapter there, and just check it out and see if you like it. No pressure.
RobRyanSullivan.com too.
Yeah. That will also take you to the Trek Within.
Yeah, it directly goes to it.
Yeah.
Then there's the other one with your business partners. It's not as relevant.
Yeah. Yeah.
I watched the video I was taking notes. Just you know how you go through these things, you take notes to make sure you got ample talking points. And I'm just watching your buddy talk about training and coaching. I'm like, I don't know if this is relevant.
Yeah. He's a cool guy. He was a drummer for Johnny Clegg for 19 years. He seems
cool. I like his hair. He's got like a Oppenheimer thing going.
Yeah.
Or a Peaky Blinders haircut where it's just all looks like
plain right there.
Yeah. That's kind of what my hair looks like right now because I got the bald skin fade going. Yeah. But I have a giant noggin, so it's not as cool. But yeah, if y'all check out Mr. Sullivan's website there, if you want to read his book, lots of stories. He has a podcast on YouTube, Trek Within, and it's got some people that we all know already, and it's very interesting. Seems to be more professional than this one, which is a feather in your cap. He's got an intro and everything. It's amazing. But yeah, thanks Rob for coming on. And if I may hit you up about some kind of what was his name? Tom Brown Jr.
Yeah, Tom Brown Jr. Yeah, he's definitely worth reading his books.
I may get you on, and if I do that series I was talking about the indigenous peoples and their trek, you may be kind of not, I don't want to say filler episode, but relevant, but not relevant. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to talk about your experience over there since you went to his boot camp and everything.
Oh my God, I would love to. Yeah, that was one of the coolest things I've ever done. And he's got, half of his books are field guides. So like edible and medicinal plants and, things like that. And then, just tracking and stuff. And then half of them are, what he learned from the Indian, which just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it might be a fun little, because that's one of the things you get, like six relevant guests, and then like little ones in between that are kind of can play off of them.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to have you on mine. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
There were so many questions I wanted to ask, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute,
Yeah, it's how these go. Yeah, you get like a certain amount of wishes you want to, and then the conversation does what it wants to do. And I learned to quit coming back to them long ago. I used to try to come back and make it weird. So we were talking about an hour and a half ago. No, just keep rolling. It's not worth it. Let it go, man. Just let go.
It's much more fun because it's like you're just having a conversation, and then people get to watch.
I cannot stand pre-written questions, which our friend Michelle sends them to us, and I use them as kind of like a jumping off point. But I never ask maybe 3 of them.
Yeah.
I hate to, because I go on some and they're like, oh, answer this question. Why don't we talk about this the whole time? It's just a jumping off point. You haven't even asked me my favorite. You haven't even asked what coffee I'm drinking right now. What kind of podcast is this? All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. And Robert, thanks for coming on. We'll go ahead and land the plane now. And check out the description for all his websites. And do you have anything else you want to plug, Rob, before we go?
No, that's it.
I
I
think we
just
got everything.
for the people who stuck with us, thank you very much.
Oh yeah, we've had quite the bit. Like they'll come in like chunks of 10. They'll come in, watch a story. This will make a good clip episode too, so stay tuned for that. All right, everyone. See you later. Have a good week.
I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it. I didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.